race fans. I'm Charlie Craig for Racing Around Carolina. We're here in the mountains of Wilkes County, North Carolina. We're very privileged tonight to be at the home of Mr. Clay Call. We're going to bring you a special show. We're going to sit and talk with Mr. Junior Johnson about the 40 Fords, about making liquor, hauling liquor in the early days, and how it all evolved into modern stock car racing as we know it today. Not only is this area famous for its poultry production, but also for its moonshine production. We're going to find out a little bit about it. Stick around, you'll enjoy it. Welcome, race fans, to this week's edition of Racing Around Carolina. I'm Charlie Craig, and I guess tonight we're going to do one of the interviews that I've looked forward to my whole life. We're here in Wilkes County, and we're invading the territory of Mr. Guy Furr and Mr. Junior Johnson. And we're going to look at some of these old cars that they have here in the shop and go back to the early days of NASCAR racing. And Junior and Guy are going to share some of those stories with us from the early days. Thanks, guys, for letting us come in and bother you guys this morning, and we thank you. And I guess finding a starting point with you guys, where do we start? Junior, moonshine liquor hauling around here was a main way of making a living back in those days. You had a choice of what, working the sawmill or farming or moonshine, right?
Well, you could work at a sawmill, but you weren't going to make nothing because they just didn't pay anything an hour. Most people was involved one way or the other with the moonshining, and that's where they made the most money at, and that's where they went, to work at. If they wasn't making it, they're selling stuff to make it with, or they was hauling it. In some kind of way, about every family was involved in the moonshine business.
What was the peak starting, the peak years of the moonshine business? Was it the late 40s?
The late 40s, early 50s. I got in trouble in 55, so it was still going on pretty strong then. It kind of fizzled out along about 59 or 60. That's where it, took a dive. From most people got out of the moonshine business because it weren't a profitable business more than anything. And of course, the drug stuff come along about that time, and a lot of the moonshiners got into that. But most other people had figured out a way of make money without doing anything illegally. Long in the mid-50s.
I know you guys had I guess the best of both worlds. You were making a good living. You were getting to be involved with development of fast automobiles, and to me, I would think the money would be great, but it would also be a lot of satisfaction to outrun somebody else's car or outrun the law, they say.
Well, it was a lot of satisfaction to get away from the law, because if you didn't get away, you went to jail, and most of the time you pulled time. So you did not get caught in that kind of situation. But as time went along, my whole career turned into a racing career. And it was a kind of a help to me that I had been in the moonshine business, because I had a head start on my career. I was as good as I was ever going to be as far as a driver was concerned, and I didn't have to go to school in NASCAR for 4 or 5 years to catch up with everybody else. Immediately I stepped right in and started winning races. So although the moonshine business, I don't think we got rich out of it back then, but it really helped me boost and get a jump start on my NASCAR career. So I got something out of it. I didn't lose everything by being in it. So it was a great life, but there come a time when you need to go on and do other things.
Guy, how did you become involved with these guys in this business?
Well, when I was 16 years old, I went to work in Kennon Mill in Kannapolis, and didn't pay too good. I worked about 3 months, and I says, well, if this is all I got to look forward to the rest of my life, I ain't going to make it. So Hope Arnhart came along and offered me a job. So I worked, it was a place called the Well House over on Little Texas Road in Kannapolis. And it was a liquor house and a bootlegging place. And also a gambling house. And I worked there with Hope for a while, and then he said, how'd you like to haul some white liquor? And I said, suits me. So JB was his brother. So JB says, I'll take you to Wilkesboro. I'll teach you all the roads. I'll talk to all the boys up there, get you in with all the boys in Wilkesboro, where you can go get your liquor. So I started hauling liquor. JB taught me to hold ropes and everything, and I hauled liquor for a couple of years. It was a way of life, like Junior says, and it's sure a pleasure to be on the show with Junior Johnson and Willie Clay Call and Miller Ashley. And it was, I don't know, it was a way of making a living back then. When you're 16, 17, 18 years old, well, it's, you know, and back in 48, 49, 50s when I was hauling. And things were pretty wild back then. And,
did you ever consider the danger that what could happen, that you could wind up in prison or you could be killed in some of those chases? At that age, did you even think about it?
every day you was underneath that wheel, you thought about stuff like that. You know you were going to get caught sooner or later. You wondered how it was going to be and what it was going to be like. I mean, you had that feeling. You didn't know you were going to get caught. But back then they didn't have a lot of radios. They didn't have any radios at all. So if you could outdrive them, you got away from them. And that was to our advantage. But when they got to radios, I was out of the business when they got to radios, so I imagine that was pretty rough.
Yeah.
I'd make about 3 to 4 trips a week from Kannapolis to Wilkesboro, bring a load from Wilkesboro to Kannapolis.
How many gallons would, say, a 40 Ford, how many gallons of white liquor could you haul in one trip?
Well, we hauled anywhere from 12 to 15 cases. And that was 12 jars, half-gallon jars in a case. 6 gallons in a case.
So it'd be the jars like
Yeah, just like right
regular
here.
mason jars.
Yeah, that good old stuff.
What kind of profit could be made in a run?
You could better than double your profit. A lot of times, guys that ran the still, they would sell it a little cheaper than other guys, so you had to, you know, like sometimes a guy wants you to haul it in the middle of the day, and they'd give you a good price to get it out of there in the middle of the day. And in one case, I had to do that to get the liquor to Kannapolis in the middle of the day. So I made pretty good money on that. We'd buy it from, as a rule, it was $12 a case, and we'd sell it for $35.
Pretty good profit.
I sold it to the bootleggers. I hauled it from the still and sold it to the bootleggers. I had a storage place that I'd store it.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about the books a little bit and some more of you guys' adventures. There's some tricks of Juniors and you guys about getting away from the law that are pretty funny, and I'd like to hit on that when we get back. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back in a couple of minutes.
My Youth for Understanding experience was the best thing I've ever done in my entire life.
If you want to learn a language, this is how you do it.
You have to live here and you have to breathe in the country.
You meet a whole new family that are willing to accept you and take you in.
I feel just like I'm a part of the family. Being involved with the family, living right at home, that has been my best learning experience so far.
You only live once, so you do it, try it, live it. It was great. It was incredible.
Go global.
And we're back. We're sitting here talking to Junior Johnson and Guy Furr about the early days of racing. And Junior, you ran Darlington in 1953 in the sportsman race in a converted Moonshine car. What did the other competitors think about you?
Well, I don't think any of them even knew me or knew anything about me at all. it was a 39 Standard Coupe that we was hauling whiskey on pretty regular, about every night, you know, 2 or 3 loads a night. And a friend of mine said, let's convert it into a race car and go to Darlington and run that big race. And of course, I didn't know nothing about the race or, you know, how we had to convert it or anything. So there's a couple boys there in North Wilkesboro that worked on Moonshine cars for most of all the bootleggers. And we went and asked them if they'd help us, you know, comply with the rules, you know, fix it. And they said sure they would. So we lit in on the thing, getting it ready to go, and it wasn't much to do to it. You basically just about had to pull the side panels off the grill and where the air could get through there. And I think they had to put some kind of buckle around the doors and that kind of stuff and take the headlights out, but some of them run with the headlights just taped up. And we did what we thought it needed to do to run there. And went down there, and of course you could run a 20-gallon gas tank. And I got a company called Jenkins Hardware. They was in the sheet metal business to make me a gas tank. It held exactly 20 gallons. And we got down there, and everybody there was on alcohol, and we was the only one there on gas. Qualified, and we qualified 4th, which was tremendously good for the crowd of people that was running them cars. And they could not believe it. We was on gas and they was on alcohol, because alcohol was probably a third more horsepower than what we was putting out or supposed to be. And they dropped the flag on the race, and the guys that was on alcohol would have to stop about every 25 laps, which is 1 mile and 3/8, I think Darlington is. And we run the whole race and didn't stop for gas. So when the race was over with, everybody thought we had a great big gas tank and a whole bunch of stuff that we didn't have. We didn't have nothing as far as I was concerned but a liquor car there. And we'd won the race, and it was all Cotton Owens and Jack Smith and some of the big names at that particular time. They run out on the racetrack when it was over with, and they pull you up in front of the start-finish line. That's where you celebrate the victory of the thing. And they jerked the trunk open and crawled underneath of it, and they was looking for 2 or 3 gas tanks underneath of the thing. And all it had was the 120-gallon gas tank. And it was sort of a mystery to them that we could run that fast with gasoline. They had to run alcohol to get the speed out of their cars. But Joe Wolf built a motor for the car, and he's up in Pennsylvania, Reading, Pennsylvania, and he's very good at building fast cars, and that's where the motor came from that we had in the car. It was like a fairy tale to think that you could go to Darlington and do that.
Was that your first experience on asphalt?
Pretty much so. I don't think we'd run any asphalt prior to that. The only asphalt I had any experience was on the highway.
Guy, were you involved with juniors racing in those early days? And 2 questions. And what made you get out of the moonshine business?
Well, I rolled a car 3 times with a load of liquor, and came to in the hospital, covered with liquor. Had the whole hospital smelling like liquor. Cabarrus Hospital. Now it's Northeast Medical Center. And the cop that was standing there when I come to, standing there with my wallet, he says, "Boy," said, "there must be some good in you somewhere. I don't know how you lived through that one." Said, "The old boy upstairs looking after you." Says, "You better quit." Says, "You're ahead." So I laid there in the hospital all night, and I kept thinking about it. So the next morning, my mother brought my shoes to me. My shoes was laying out in the field. So she brought my shoes to me, and she says, "Well, have you learned your lesson?" I says, "Yeah, I think so, Mama." So I quit. I didn't haul no more after that.
Did you guys wear seat belts in those days?
Well, we had something made up similar to seat belts, and an old seat out of a pickup truck or something, you know, single seat, stuff like that. You know, back then they didn't have decent seats in 48 and 49, 50 along in there. You just had to rig something up, something to keep you in place, you know, so you didn't slide around too much.
You mentioned turning the car over. I've got to hear the story about you guys coming up on the sheriff's car and it was overturned.
Well, me and Gwen Staley, a good friend of mine that is a brother to the guy that ran North Wilkesboro Speedway, Enoch Staley. We was hauling liquor out of Lenore, and it's about 30 miles west of here. And we kind of run together all the time in case one had trouble or something other that, you know, we could have at least a car there to go get help or whatever we needed with. And we'd always go to Lenore and get our whiskey and come back to North Wilkesboro. Had a service station there. We'd just pull in, he'd gas us up, and we'd go on, because we couldn't make it to where we was going if we didn't stop and get gas somewhere along the way. And we was coming down through there, me and Gwen, and I forget which one of us was running in front of the other, and pretty close together. We come around this real sharp curve, and there's dirt and stuff all on the road, and you could see where somebody went up the bank and stuff, and it was a curve going to the right, and then there's one right back to the left. And we both, you know, locked our cars down to get them stopped, because we knew somebody had wrecked. And when we went around the curve to the left, I laid a car upside down, you know, on the top. And it just had happened, because they had never got out of the car when we got there. So we pulled off to the side, jumped out and run over there, started helping getting them out, and lo and behold, it was the high sheriff and a friend of his that had the wreck. And of course, we were sitting there with 2 loads of liquor, you know, and we didn't know whether we wanted to haul them down the road or leave them standing there or what, but they asked us to bring them to North Wilkesboro and drop them off. And of course, one of them crawled on top of the whiskey in Gwen's car, and one crawled on top of it in my car, and we brought them and dropped them off at the jailhouse and went on about our business. But there was never nothing any, as far as I was concerned, you know, it wasn't no big thing, because we helped them out and they helped us out, and we just went on about our business.
And it says in the book, every time the sheriff would see you, he'd just say, "Junior, you boys been up the road lately?" That's great.
It's liquor business in Wilkes County was more of a federal thing than it was a local sheriff thing. Most of the sheriff was friends of everybody's, and nobody thought anything about, you know, that kind of thing. But Gwen and myself was basically pretty well aware that they was the kind of people we was. We wasn't worried about them, either one of them bothering us, and they wasn't worried about us either.
We're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back in just a minute.
When disaster strikes, who will be there to help? Who will deliver food, clothing, medical supplies? Who will rescue the stranded in communities just like yours? You will, as a member of the Air National Guard. Feel the pride, get the experience. Join the Air National Guard and fuel your future. Defend America's skies from hostile intruders. Protect America's interests around the globe. The mission of the Air National Guard fighter remains the same. What's changing is the face of the person who flies it. The Air National Guard.
And we're back. We're here in Wilkes County, and we're talking with Guy Furr and Junior Johnson about the old days. Junior, I want to hear a little bit about your first race and how that came about, how you got involved.
Well, they was having a race here at North Wilkesboro, though. Back then it was called Grand National, now it's called the Western Cup. And they only ran 100 mile back at that time, and from the time they qualified to the time they'd run the race, they had a big break in there, like an hour, hour and a half, and the fans didn't have any entertainment or anything, so they decided they'd run a Wilkes County bootlegging cars, you know, have a race with them. And they announced they was going to have them, and my brother, he was in the bootleg business and had a pretty fast car. And, he didn't want to drive it, and so he came to my daddy's farm, which is about 10 miles down the road here. And I was plowing corn with a mule, barefooted and stuff, and he comes up and he said, "Come on, I want you to drive my car in a race at North Wilkesboro." I said, "Well, let me tie this mule." I tied the mule to the fence and got in the car and went by the house and got my shoes and come on to North Wilkesboro. And of course they buckled us all in with ropes and tied us down and all that kind of stuff. And set us all off to race. It must have been 25 or 30 bootlegging cars on the racetrack. And Glenn Staley finally won the race, and I finished second to him. But that was my first experience of racing any kind of thing other than racing on the highway, because good bootlegging guys had fast cars, and they always wanted to know who had the fastest car. So they raced a lot of times late at night. You know, they would challenge each other in the way they'd go and find a place to race them against each other, that kind of stuff. But that was the first race that I ever run on a racetrack.
Did you get the same enjoyment? Was it the same feeling, or was it totally different when you were running an organized race in front of a crowd and you were going to become so famous as it was to run the back roads and outrun the police?
I think running the back roads and outrun the police was more exciting.
Really?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
You went on to accomplish, I would say, everything that can be accomplished in racing, and you've had, well, name some of the drivers you've had over the years for those that don't know.
Well, you know, I've had Cale Yarber, Darrell Waltrip, Bobby Allison, Leroy Yarber, Terry Labonte, A.J. Foy drove for me, Mario Andretti. I've had tremendous Curtis Turner, just on and on and on over the period of years it's drove my race cars. You could not have put together no better drivers than it's been in race cars. Farval Roberts drove some for me one time.
Was there ever a driver that you wanted that you didn't have?
Dale Earnhardt.
I had heard that rumor.
I had 3 shots at Dale Earnhardt, and I didn't get him. And that, you know, I always felt like it, although I accomplished a lot with Darrell Waltrip and Cale and different ones, I think me and Earnhardt would have topped anything that anybody ever put together if we'd have got together. But you never know. It might not have worked out. I think him and Richard Childress has had a great, wonderful career. And it's sad that Earnhardt's, you know, career ended like it did, but he accomplished a lot. He's a great driver.
Do you, other than yourself, do you consider him the best? Can you pick a best?
You can't pick a best. It's awful hard to do that because drivers have careers, and when they're in their prime, there's nobody else in prime with them. So I can say I ain't never seen one I thought I couldn't outrun. That's all I can tell you.
I like that answer. That's a great answer. Do you miss it?
No. I miss the people. Don't miss the race.
Do you go to any races now?
Hadn't been to one since I quit.
Well, he said when I hung it up from driving, I was gonna keep it hung up. So I guess you got the same feeling about retirement, huh?
Well, you know, I've got other things going on in my life, and you know, some people die in a sport, and it's great they can hang on to it that long. I just got other things I want to do. Racing's been a part of my life, but not all of my life.
I tell you, you guys have. I'm ready to retire and come sit with you here because this has just been wonderful up here today, and I'm glad that you've given us the opportunity to come and pick your brain a little and share some of these memories. And we've got a couple of books I want to talk about and mention. We've got Return to Thunder Road by Alex Gabbard here, and we're going to give a little information at the end of the show. And Junior, I just finished your book, Brave in Life, and I tell you, it's worth the price of the book just for the photographs and to learn some of the inside information about you that the average person does not know. And you've definitely been brave in your life, and you've accomplished 100 times more than most guys could ever want to. And it's just been a real pleasure for us to come in and sit with you and realize a long dream of getting to meet you and actually sit and talk to you one-on-one.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
And we appreciate the opportunity, Guy. We thank you, and we'll be getting together again on another show talking some more about the old Moonshine days. So we're gonna just get on out of here now, and I know you guys have things to do, so we're gonna wrap it up, and folks, we'll see you next week.